No, as long as Ben and everybody else is good with it, I'm deferring to your judgment.
No, we had a couple of different staff meetings, working group meetings with Sussex, and it seems like everything will be pretty comparable to what Menominee Falls have been doing. My opinion, they might actually do a little bit more, in the sense that they're willing for the water utility to kind of take over first call responses. So I know, especially with what happened a couple weeks ago, no one really knew who exactly to call. Sussex will take all of those calls.
So I had one question. I actually got a call from John Bauman today, just to get some clarification on the expansion project stuff. And the topic of meter reading came up, and he said that this does not cover the meter readings.
No, it does not. As we've been discussing in the past meetings, we were talking about having the police, our police officers with a scanner driving through the village. So no, this program does not include any meter reading by Sussex. That's still up in the air, and that's still something we have to settle.
Yeah, the way the technology works, just so everyone knows, is it's literally like a black box that it's a drive-by remote metering system. So someone just has to put it in the front seat of their car and drive around the village once a quarter.
And I'm working with the Badger meter on the things we need to get from them, the meters that we need to have in stock for Sussex to install and the reading equipment and things like that. So we're just kind of working on that process. Menominee Falls is still reading our meters for the end of this quarter. So
Perfect.
we have a little bit of time, not much.
But Sussex indicated over there, they even have their admin staff or something just do it.
So we have a couple months yet before we have to have the little black box.
So that the next quarter will be the end of the year,
Yeah,
right?
So that box would be part of the SCADA system.
No,
It's just
it's
a
a
meter
separate,
reading.
It's a
it's a
sample.
software
it's a separate unit.
system.
Has nothing to do with SCADA. SCADA is just alarm, basically an alarm system.
So then is that something that then you would bring in and plug into your software to
Yeah, I-
download the billing
Yeah, and
information? and-
updated, there's a
generate-
file that they generate now in the falls after they do their readings, and then they send it to me, so it would be something that would work with my utility system to upload all of the meter readings or get me reports to print out to enter, so.
Okay, so as you start looking at the accounting stuff too.
Yeah, I'm looking at the utility
Look
stuff
at
too.
integration with that. Yeah.
Yep.
They have the keys. They're all set to take over the first.
And you have your set.
I have a set.
So I can
That tree-
turn in the key to the well house. I don't have to go there every day on the weekend anymore.
Yep. Call tree has been sent out. And I have their call tree, they have our call tree.
So from what I read, the only number that the people, our residents need is the after hours police Waukesha Communications Center, and they will route all calls. And can you put that like in big flashing lights or something on the website?
Ben has already asked Beth Foy to do an update.
Yeah, they're gonna update the land and water page tonight.
Put some blinking lights and stars.
I don't know about the blinking star.
Sirens and-
It's the first thing that'll be on the website. is
A faucet with water drop.
Here's who you call for water pressure, water quality, or sewer issues.
Yes, Doctor.
I just wanted to point out on page 2, I wasn't involved in this, and I believe that item C6 may be a continuation of what we had in place with Menominee Falls, in that Sussex here will not be the operator of record for the land and water utility. And for everyone's education, Ben could explain what the role of the operator of record is, because I think that since we're making this change and in the light of what took place recently, it behooves us to take a look at the arrangements that we have with the operator of record.
So DNR has the Natural Resources Code, and I believe it's in our 811 or maybe it's 809 that governs the operations of drinking water utilities. And they require that each utility be operated by a DNR certified licensed operator. So that is CTW Corporation. They have the licensed operators, and in that capacity, I understand that CTW is responsible for operation and maintenance of both of the well houses, the booster station, and the reservoir. Historically, CTW has responded to calls about water pressure or water quality. They've helped flush hydrants in the system as needed. They take all required samples for bacteria. They monitor chlorine levels, all things of that nature. So they will continue in that capacity in this agreement. Sussex isn't taking over that part of the water utility operation. Sussex will be taking over the first call, and then I think Sussex will be available to help operate mainline valves and hydrants as requested. And then when Sussex gets the first call, let's say it's a water pressure issue, then all Sussex is going to do is work through the call tree. And Sussex will also help with emergency response. They'll kind of run point, so to speak, as, you know, kind of getting the right people involved and helping to sort everything out.
Any more comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the utility maintenance service agreement between the village of Sussex and the village of Lynn.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6, discussion and possible action regarding update SCADA supervisory controls and data acquisition, communication systems and equipment for the sewer and water systems.
Okay, I sent this to Brenda very late in the afternoon. Brenda, were you able to make copies?
I did make copies, they should be up there.
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is a one-page kind of summary of where we're at, put together by Strand SCADA engineer. It's only related to the lift stations at this time. So the issue at hand that we didn't appreciate until a couple of weeks ago is when Menominee Falls said that they were going to terminate the contracts, operations contracts. They're also in the midst of completely changing their SCADA communications technology. So traditionally, these things run on radio systems, and they have radios that relay the telemetry signal from one facility to the next and ultimately to a base station that's at the utility office. What we actually learned is that Sussex is doing away with their radios and they're switching to 100% fiber system. So it's a complete different technology than what exists at the lift stations right now. So
You
the
mean
two
Menominee
options.
Falls, don't you, Ben?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Sussex.
Menominee Falls, correct. Sussex still uses radios. So Strand SCADA engineer was out here, looked at all of the lift stations and the Whispering Ridge well house with Ron last week, I believe. Has been talking to a lot of suppliers, including Sussex, because we do the SCADA programming and SCADA work for Sussex, to figure out what would work best. and there's two options. Option one is to get a standalone cellular dialer alarm. It's literally a flashing light device that would get installed on top of the control cabinets. And when an alarm signal, which is hardwired to the alarm, when the signal trips the alarm, the light will start flashing, and then it's got a cellular modem in it that'll start working its way through a call tree. Option two is to do a cellular router that'll send the signal straight to the Sussex SCADA system and will be embedded in Sussex's software, and it will alert Sussex staff in the same manner that their existing Sussex alarms kind of trigger and work in their SCADA system to trigger their staff. So both of these are an interim solution until Lannon works to get its own robust SCADA system, which is part of the agreement with Sussex. They want Lannon to have their own standalone full system by July of next year. So with option one, the cost for 3 of these alarms in total is just over $11,000. But the chance of them being reused in the full build out of the SCADA system is essentially 0. Option two, with these cellular routers, there's still a chance that this technology does not get used in a full build out of the system, because the preference is still to use radio telemetry. We'll also evaluate if fiber will work, but the likelihood is that there's 1 or 2 stations that radio or fiber won't work, and you'll have to use a cellular router. So to that end, with option two, there's a chance of being able to kind of preserve part of that expense and integrate it into full build out of the system. So I reached out to, well, with option two, there'd be some programming involved to Sussex's software to get those things to work within their network. Sussex is fully on board with that, willing to accommodate that. So those are the 2 options. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts on what you want to do.
What's your recommendation?
Our SCADA guy said, you know, it's kind of an exercise in playing the odds. There's a chance that even if you go with option two, if radio works everywhere, we're gonna recommend radio. And that wouldn't be useful. I also asked him for option one, which we know won't get reused. I said, well, what's the resale value on these things? He said the supplier told him they would buy them back for $800, which is, you know, less than a tenth of what the cost to integrate them to start with would be. So playing the odds, Jason felt that, you know, for option 3, you're buying 3 of these things. Said odds are pretty good that you'll reuse at least 1 of them, if not 2 of them. So that's kind of the direction he's going.
But all 3 will work with the Sussex integration. They would just
No.
prefer that we use radio telemetry.
Well, for the long term,
But why does it matter to them?
to
As long as our
Sussex.
stuff communicates with
Good
theirs.
question. So Sussex, before this came up, when we were talking about just the utility service agreement, Sussex, we talked to them about just integrating all of Lannon's infrastructure into their SCADA, so it operates as one software system. They said they do not want that. They would rather have, for sake of clarity, they would rather have Lannon have its standalone system, and that Sussex basically has remote access to it. And they also advised, you know, I forget what the term of the initial agreement is, 3 years? Or something like that.
6, yeah, it's about 3 years.
Okay, so they said Lannon having its own SCADA also gives Lannon ultimate flexibility. Maybe in 3 years from now, you want to hire a utility superintendent or something to that effect,
Right.
and you don't need Sussex to monitor it. There's no change. in that scenario. So that's why I say on option 2, they were okay with this because for the short term, we actually will modify their SCADA. And it will be one system, but still by July, they want that out of there and planning to have its own.
So my last question then is, can we slip some of these hard costs into the expansion project contingency?
Okay, so these are all sewer and
Yeah, that's right.
the programming costs, we're aiming to, well, all of this would essentially come out of the sewer fund. Part of it would be attributable, all the expenses related to the Custer station
Yeah.
will be attributable to that project, which is being paid for with TID funds.
Okay.
As far as the SCADA infrastructure goes overall, we already had the water SCADA as a contingency project in the USDA program. So as we move forward in the next month or so, you'll get a proposal from us of, hey, here's what a full SCADA system could look like and how we should go about it. And some of that'll be TID eligible, some of that'll be sewer eligible, some of it'll be USDA contingency.
And if I'm not mistaken, Carriage Controls has now gotten the dialer up and running.
I still don't know the
Well,
answer to that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they haven't got back to me either.
So I thought Sarah sent an email with,
That it was running or working. or
yeah,
it was
with
all
a
connected.
login and password. and
So
stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing that I am honestly still confused about is if she's explicitly talking about Whispering Ridge or if she's just talking about Land and Estates.
So we need some further clarification on
Yeah.
that, right? Because that's SCADA as well, right?
Correct.
And so how are they gonna monitor those? Of Sussex?
In the interim, we don't have the answer for that yet, basically. The objective is to get the dialers working or replace the dialers.
Yep.
That's the interim solution for those.
And we can feed in on top of that at a later time. We can feed in on top of those dialers, purposes to where they go at another time.
Yeah, correct. So let's
Right.
say the option ends up being up at the Whispering Ridge Well House, getting a better modern technology dialer. Then that will be the dialer that gets used in Lannon's full SCADA system.
Right, because that monitors the
Moving
entire
forward.
system-wide pressure,
Correct.
right? But it doesn't monitor specifics in regards to the land and estates well.
Correct.
But there could be a separate identical dialer put there.
Right.
Will that system be expandable when we do a third well?
Yes.
Yeah, they're all like plug and play modular kind of deals, right?
Yep. So the way that SCADA works is there's a local kind of computer controller at each piece of infrastructure, and it's got a signal output. So the way that it works right now on the lift stations is that output signal at each of the 2 lift stations and then the metering station gets sent via radio straight to the falls, where the falls has a computer software that reads it and turns that into useful information. Right now on Whispering Ridge Well House, that all happens locally. So there's, computer signal output from the well, from each of the pumps, from some pressure sensors, maybe like 5 total things. And those outputs all get tied together locally to a computer in that well house that makes the information readable. So the trick is because it's all local, that's all hardwired right now. And then the only way any signal gets out is through the dialer and calls somebody. So now to tie each of these points within Lannon together, it needs telemetry to get it all to a base station that will read it. And the thought is that a base station would be a computer, a dedicated computer here, and then each of these sites would relay their signal either via radio, fiber, or cellular here. There would then be the dialer would presumably be here. So that when it reads whatever alarms that it's interpreting through SCADA, then it would initiate call tree that way. So right now, it's just operating as a bunch of standalone stuff, and SCADA is gonna tie it all together.
Sector.
In the event that there is some power failure, will there be a problem with the dialer system as compared to the cellular, or for that matter, how does a cellular system get powered? Is there a backup battery?
There's a generator at the Whispering Ridge well house.
Right, so right
Natural
now,
gas generator.
yeah, the dialer is at the Whispering Ridge, and it works that way with the backup power. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I would probably be in favor of number two.
Yeah. At
I
least
mean,
give an
there's-
option to possibly use it again
Yeah, I mean, there's,
for one station or multiple. At least we're gonna get something out of it instead of just throwing away $11,000.
right,
We give $800 back.
And if we can find one of those flyback units, we can do that.
so, I'll make a motion that we, approve option number 2 as presented by Strands, SCADA engineer.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion?
Time to implement is approximately 3 weeks.
Is it done yet?
What's that?
Is it done yet?
No. it's not.
So will the well house have to be manually monitored temporarily till carriage controls?
I'll reach out to Sarah at Mid-City and get the exact scoop on what carriage control said about the dialer.
I believe they've hooked it up and got it working.
Okay.
And she sent a login and password and the URL on it, or the IP address and everything.
Okay, if it is working, our SCADA guy highly recommended a test.
Really?
Go figure.
And you will take care of that at Strand?
I will look, if for nothing else, for my own peace of mind, I'll check into that.
I'll show you after the meeting.
Sounds great.
Email.
Would this be on like a weekly test then as well? Like CTW, would they do a regular test on that on a weekly basis to make sure that these things are working, they're going out to the right people?
That's not a bad thought. I don't know what the protocol is for that.
They
It'd be
don't
something
know.
to discuss with CTW.
Yeah, they don't know.
That was proven.
Could we,
I think we have to
I
get
think we
that.
can dictate that.
Yeah,
at some
just
point.
part of their testing process, that they test the alarms? Make sure they're going out?
At least when the contract renews, for sure, but
so I think until then, we gotta do a modification or something because that was totally unacceptable to me. And there was a lot of finger pointing going on. And still, our village paid the price for it. So, and you look into that. I know Tom from Mid-City and our one meeting we had here brought it up, exactly what they do every week. And to review that and make sure that at least that system, I think it should be tested every week. How does everybody else feel?
Yeah, and it should probably go through that tree, right? I mean, that.
Yeah, my
should go
guess
as a
is.
Test.
Is weekly could be excessive, but honestly, I don't know. I would want to consult, since the call tree presumably is gonna start calling Sussex, I wanna get their input on that.
Yes.
yeah, I would think monthly or quarterly would be adequate.
They might have a protocol at Sussex,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of find out what theirs is and go from there.
If you could do that. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding water system expansion, project restoration, and a potential to send the contractor a written notice of defective work.
Well, as everyone, I mean, I'll jump in, I
Go
guess,
for
Ben. As everybody knows, Vinton / ESI, although I think mostly Vinton performed a lot of this, but they've been out doing more restoration work, redoing a lot of work. I've had some conversations with Jeff. I've driven around and looked at some spots. I haven't heard any specific feedback beyond that from residents about other problem areas. I did drive around today. The condition was germination of new grass. That was the goal. It appears that we've accomplished that. I drove around and lifted up some of the EMAT in a few spot check places, and we definitely have some grass germinating. So that's kind of where it's at, but I'll certainly open it up to other feedback or to Jeff from Vinton if he's got more comments or anything to add to that.
Well, I got in town later than I was hoping. I just drove through quickly. I would agree that we've started to get some germination. Obviously, it's not perfectly green yet. It's still in its infancy. I can't speak to how long it needs to fully take, because I'm just not that good with grass. Obviously, the bigger question is obviously the completion date is tomorrow. I don't know if it's possible to extend that few weeks. I don't know if that's enough time or not. I don't know what we're dealing with as far as how quick it can take off. But I do feel that we've gotten a lot of the bad out and a lot of the good in, and it should hopefully be growing for us.
Yes, Ben.
I discussed this with Isaac later this afternoon, and coincidentally, within a couple days of them doing the work, I did a full walkthrough with Mid-City for the landscape punch list for the private property side, and was able to observe the extensive work that Vinton and ESI did. So we go back to this letter that precipitated from September 12th board action, and the letter we sent Vinton was dated the 19th. And it basically gave them notice that they need to comply, that there was defective work, and they needed to comply by September 29th. So the first fact of the matter is that they've been out, they've done a ton of work since then, and they have addressed the work that was previously looked at as being defective. Now, the formal procedure that was kind of initiated by the village to send them this notice of defective work was that if they didn't take corrective action by today, that the village was going to, forgive me the weird verbiage, but accept the defective work, hire somebody else to do it, and then either withhold payment or bill them for that. I think talking this through with Isaac, we definitely don't want to do that, because just like Jeff said, they've been out here, there's the beginnings of germination. It's too early to tell. So as far as this letter goes, we honestly think that if the village does nothing with this letter, that means that this issue kind of expires, so to speak. If the village wanted to go the route of doing the work yourself, you would have to take further action to accept the defective work. So our thought, and Hector, I'd be curious of your input, is if you just don't even entertain that action, that then this issue just kind of resolves, so to speak. Now, as far as the completion date being tomorrow, the completion date can lapse. They have not submitted the final pay request, which is, I believe, is for like $250,000 plus or minus.
I know it's a chunk of change. I
Right.
can't tell you how much.
Right, so at this point, just looking at the dates, it's kind of too late for them to submit that and get on the October board agenda. So the first time we would see their final payout would be the November board meeting. And I would think everyone would have an awfully darn good idea by then as to whether or not this worked or if a date needs to be extended. So one approach to this, quite honestly, would be just wait and see, let Vinton submit their final pay up, and by the November meeting, we'll kind of know. And everyone needs to be aware, of course, if it doesn't take by November, if things are still moving in the right direction, you know, then it kind of is gonna have to become a warranty issue at that point. You give it through the spring, and see what happens.
So that was one of that's a good segue, because one of my questions was regarding the warranty period, and when does that start? Does that start at the completion date set in the contract? So the warranty period would start a year from October 1st, right?
Yeah, I need to check with Emily on that, because honestly, it's complicated, because the warranty on the water main, for example, started when the water main was put in use, which was basically last November.
Thanksgiving, yeah.
Right, right. Now, the warranty on the work that's just being done, I don't think is gonna expire in September. I previously talked to her and she said warranty will go at least through spring on the restoration, but exactly how far I don't know.
I mean, I don't know about anybody else, or if anybody else has any other comments. I think I mentioned to Jeff before the meeting, I think it would be appropriate to get some watering done on that early next week, because we've had a couple dry days here and it's gonna be dry on the week next week. And we're still missing an Emerald Drive street sign.
I was talking to Joel Fielding today, and he said, hey, that street sign on Emerald is still not up, and I said, we'll get to the bottom of that. But this kind of had priority to get everything fixed up, but we will get the street sign up.
All right. Now, if you're having a lot of problems with that, I know a guy. So they're not that hard.
No, I understand, we will get that taken care of.
I think there's a year's worth of UPS and FedEx packages stacked up at the end of the road, right?
You know, there's also a year's worth of irritation over there, so.
My comment on this is I dealt with Jeff on multiple occasions on this. Personally, I've been through part of the walkthrough. I've had extremely little negative feedback. You're always going to get a little bit. I myself favor not sending this letter, because I think Jeff's busted his butt to handle this situation since he's gotten involved in it. The least is it worth pushing the completion date back to the end of October? Is there any advantage to doing that?
Honestly, at this point, I don't think there's any advantage to doing that.
What's your thoughts, Hector?
Do we have a copy of the letter that went out? Could I see it, please? So the operative paragraph in the letter for everyone's information is, as of September 12th, the village has deemed the restoration work completed to date to be effective according to section 1403 of the general conditions. This letter serves as a written notice of defective work in accordance with section 1404 of the contract. If Vinton does not comply with the notice by September 29th, 2020, then the village will proceed with accepting the defective work. And there's a footnote which explains what that means, and basically the village steps in with another contractor and does the work. So I am in agreement with Ben with regards to not taking any action with regards to accepting the defective work. Now, the one thing that I'm not sure of is the impact of extending the completion date from the standpoint of the trigger point for the warranty to start proceeding. Unless Ben can correct me, I don't know what negative consequence there would be for the village to extend the completion date if the contractor is agreeable to that.
Well, I mean, if there's the warranty goes through the spring, I mean, I don't believe there's any other outstanding issues. If the contract would be deemed complete by tomorrow and everything is just in warranty, does it really matter? I mean, I understand that there's not full germination yet, so I guess it's really what you guys prefer. Now, I don't necessarily like the fact that we just do nothing, because then in theory, we didn't meet our completion date, which we did, but we didn't, you follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, I think what you're trying to say is that if we just let the completion date be tomorrow, or October 1, whatever we deem it be, then that warranty work would start kicking in for the springtime, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Forgive me if I did not express myself correctly. I believe that if the village extends the completion date, the warranty clock does not start ticking until that new completion date. And the advantage for the village would be, and for you, in one respect, if you get together with your foreman or superintendent who was with you the last time and discover that you missed some work that you can't get done tomorrow, you still have time to deal with that. And at the same time, the village gets the benefit of an extension of the warranty work as an offset for the inconvenience that the village residents have experienced, particularly if we do have some bad weather between now and spring. That's my thinking process. And I believe that it would not be unreasonable to follow the suggestion of the village president that the completion date be extended to the end of October, so that everything could be finally assessed.
And I don't think that would slow down your pay application process at all. I mean, you could still, I mean, we're not gonna see that until the November meeting anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, either way, I agree on the pay application, because even if we do nothing and their contract completion date is tomorrow, and they submit something and we still see that something's effective, we're still not gonna recommend payment for it. You know what I mean? Still $250,000 hanging out there. And that's why, you know, if the contract is extended 1 month, then village gets the benefit of 1 month more warranty on that, presumably. You know, timing of final payout, either way, it's gonna be November board.
That might just be the path of least resistance if you're
I'm
open to that.
I'm open to that. That is acceptable.
Yeah, that way you're not pushing your final pay request. You're not changing that date, but it's just a little extra buffer in there that gives your company and the village a little more leeway so that there's not a deadline going to bang tomorrow.
I do want to let you know that I do appreciate how quickly you got on that and how thorough of a job you did immediately. So I appreciate you taking the message to heart and addressing it personally right away. And I heard no negative comments at all that I.
It looks great too.
So
I mean,
you really went the extra mile there at the end to get across the line. I appreciate that.
Yes, my first call from Jeff was about 6:30, I think, the following morning. I agree with Patrick that you guys stepped up and you went around your subcontractor and you did the majority of it yourself. You came in, you lived up to your word. The couple of complaints that I heard, you would have never satisfied them. I mean, I think you guys did a great job. I wish it would have been done this spring, but hindsight's 20/20. And again, echoing Patrick, I think you guys stepped up. Made a huge step forward. And I think that speaks for you as a representative of your company. You gave us your word, you lived up to your word 110%. And on behalf of our entire village, I thank you for that.
we want to make a motion then to extend the.
Yeah,
to
I'll make a motion to extend the completion date to the end of October. And no recommendation on any necessary action for the written notice.
I'll second.
We have to change that to show withdrawal after.
No, nothing needs to be done here.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jeff. Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Again, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're still in council.
I've seen you down there a couple of times. Thank you.
As far as the game, the earliest representative.
Just leave it. No, I think it's better if I will just use it. It's like- It's better.
It'll be lots more fun. Don't leave too soon. Am I missing?
Talk to this guy. He said
Well, this will be a. Miami to Philadelphia.
I still need to say, guys.
I wonder if
Big year, Miami. Well, the NFL has announced that the game schedule. All right, see ya.
It's phone line. Yes.
It'd be good, Paul, when.
Again, I have all the apps.
So.
Nobody will notice.
Just prop it up here. Oh, no, it's enough. And they're in Miami. Starts at 7. Sorry? I don't really have a choice on whether it comes or not, so.
7%, I guess 6, and Bill told me I was crazy, it was never gonna hit 6, now we're at 7. It's looking like 9. This towel gets crazy and flips like England did when they saw their currency was crashing down.
There you go, you should be the next, what was the guy, right? Murray, Arthur Murray, right?
For you, yeah, there's a lot of those guys that kind of freak it, they think every year hoping that one of these years it's gonna strike. But I don't know, this time seems weird, because if you look at
Randy,
all the economies are starting to get kind of different. That's kind of how it's set up in 29. Remember what happened there? Too much free money, and now we're at the point where in 2008, we had the housing crash.
November can't come soon.
They're both wrong.
Well, they're all-
The key is to
they're all-
really stop spending, and they're spending it one way or the other. 142% is the GDP to debt in the danger zone. So unless somebody decides to say, hey, let's turn this shit off.
Right.
Mark my words,
Start making
a lot of small municipalities.
I never got one. Mike?
Find a way to work out.
Yeah.
Too much debt that comes out. Throwing it around. Have a good night. Hey, I got an interesting message today of a guy stuck up in a bucket lid.
That was fun.
I had to slide down a 60-foot snorkel lift once because it kind of blew everything out underneath.
I had options. I wasn't too worried about that one today. Fortunately, I just come down about 15 feet lower.
How tall is that? Is that 20 feet? 25 feet? What's the lift on that?
Oh, yeah.
20. It doesn't look that tall.
Yeah, right now.
It's up there.
Have a good night.
See ya.
I wonder if Steve. Do we have paperwork for that? Thank you.
No, we had a special board.
This is like he's a aquarium in the back of the barn.
Okay, good work. I'm hearing that microphones aren't on. You can't hear on the audio. This thing gets sent out. You ain't talking in this, you don't know what to say.
That's true. That's true. I just wanted to see it, so I went on to YouTube, one of them that was posted, and I was at the meeting, and I could barely hear some of those words.
Yeah, we gotta get him moved up closer because we lose you on this thing in the meeting. It goes out over your way.
Oh, when I'm talking.
Yeah.
Or a mic. Or we can just put a chair down on the cage.
And do that as part of the skate upgrade. Some AV stuff.
Right.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this planning commission meeting to order on Thursday, September 29th at 6:50. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Bennett.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Nellis.
Here.
Janice. Haylander. Here. Summers.
Here.
Yates.
Here.
Statement of public notice.
Has been posted.
Discussion and possible approval of plan commission meeting minutes from 8/25/22.
I'll make a motion to table until the minutes become available.
I second.
We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments? No disruptive behavior will be allowed. Direct your comments to the board. Anything, Terry?
No, I was
No.
just picking on her,
Yeah,
telling her to behave.
the only comment I had was, you guys have to put your mics on because I watched one of the YouTube, that I was at and could barely hear the, trustees talking. Kind of there.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that was the only thing I was gonna say, but Patrick wanted to pick on me, so.
Better look up that, Rick. She could be looking up by now.
Right.
Thank you, Terry. Any more citizen comments? Moving on, discussion of possible action regarding a requested exception to village ordinance 78-43 subparagraph 3 pertaining to minimum 3-to-1 slope requirement for Kelly's rock solid storage, where a retaining wall with a 1.5-to-1 slope is designed by the applicant's professional engineer.
Can I go first, please?
Yes, Ben?
Thank you. So I want to call your attention to this 3-page letter that should be in your packet with PSE. Stands for Parish Survey and Engineering. Turn to the second page at the bottom. The last paragraph on this page says per village ordinances. I would like to read this aloud. Section 7843 sub 3 preservation of topography. In order to protect the property owner from possible damage due to change in existing grade of adjoining lands and to aid in preserving the natural beauty of the landscape, no change in the existing topography shall be made which would affect drainage or increase the slope to a ratio greater than 3 horizontal to 1 vertical within a distance of 20 feet from the property line. Turn the page, it continues. Exceptions to this requirement, including retaining walls, may be permitted with the notification of the abutting property owner and the approval of the plan commission. In no case shall any slope exceed the normal angle of slippage of the material involved, and all slopes shall be protected against erosion. So this obviously pertains to Kelly's rock solid storage, and the village previously approved plan of operation, the site plan that includes a retaining wall. And in doing our engineering review in preparation for their grading permit application, we had some back and forth discussion with the applicant and their engineer about what exact slopes on top of the retaining wall would be allowable. We were still advocating for 3-to-1 for various reasons that are justifiable. The applicant wants 1.5-to-1. We recommended that the applicant's engineer pull together basically a design certification letter, which is this letter that's in your packet, stamped and signed by a licensed professional engineer that indicates all of the design standards, the safety factors, the uniform design criteria for the walls, and all the kind of inputs into the design. Furthermore, we asked that the design engineer of record provide a construction certification letter after the wall is actually built, kind of that would confirm that the wall was indeed built in accordance with their design. So they have indicated that they are willing to provide that upon completion of design. So to that end, I don't have any further kind of objection, other than, as you heard in my reading of the ordinance, that this does require 2 more things. One is notification of the abutting property owner. That would be Dave Needler and Artistic Stone. The applicant provided a receipt of the certified mailing to the property owner's address of this design certification letter. So in my opinion, they've satisfied that. And then the second thing being approval from the plan commission. Those are really my only comments. Obviously, the applicant's here, if you want them to make any comments.
Do you have the dates for the notification of the appointment?
Yes, on the receipt here, it's September 26, 2022.
Excuse me, I've actually spoke personally with Dave also, actually just right before the meeting here. The only issue he was just discussing with me was the retention areas, which we're on that.
The stormwater retention.
Correct, but everything else he was good with. We've actually been playing here in the sandbox now, which is good. He didn't, I even asked him if he was planning on coming to the meeting this evening. He said no. I hand delivered the letter also, and met up with him, so we've done, I think, our due diligence.
I have a couple questions. One is, I'm trying to visualize when you're saying east wall, west wall. If I recall, this is all north-south, isn't it over there, or how is this going?
The wall going from east to west. It's on the
Okay.
south side of the property.
Okay,
So basically, it's abutting Dave Diebler's property all the way along.
so it says east wall, west wall.
Yep.
Where's the midpoint then? Where does it change? I mean, if you have a drawing that.
Yeah.
Cause I'm trying to visualize this now, if the block on the, and the slope is.
It's basically closest to David's property up on top is where the larger, or let's just say, the shorter of the two walls, but the higher of the two walls are. And then as the topography drops in grade, there's an opening between the two walls because that's where the drive slopes down.
Okay, so that wall is facing the neighbor
Correct. This is the Dave's property here.
then? Okay, and how far off the lot line is that?
6 inches, I believe.
What kind of block was that?
It's Unilock.
It's,
You would be better.
yeah, it's called Sienna Edge. It's a Unilock product. It's a 44-inch by, I believe, 8-inch tall by 12-inch back.
Okay, is it glued in place then, or is it just locked?
It's got ribs on top of
Ribs
it,
on
locks,
top.
correct. Yeah, and the biggest thing about this project is the engineering behind the thing called geotextiles that basically go in between the block layers that like every 2 blocks. And those go back, actually, at that one wall, they go back 18.5 feet.
Okay,
So what that is that material holds the earth so that the wall cannot freeze and thaw and push forward. That makes sense.
is there a fencing that goes across the top of this? Cause I see, I think there's one point where,
That is what Dave and I were just discussing because of the fact that the wall is 18.5 feet tall. I don't find too many people climbing it. But
people could fall off.
correct.
I
So
am-
what we're talking about is that I still haven't come up with exactly, because it's one of those things that wait and see when it gets built. We do plan on putting a fence. The question is, are we gonna put the fence all the way around the property? Or if it's gonna be a certain stop point and start point? So Dave and I were talking about that because I was talking about the plant life I want to put between the 2 properties, like evergreens and stuff, because I'll be honest with you, Dave's property is not the best looking property. So as we were discussing, I was just saying that I would probably revisit my landscape install with him prior to install. But yes, there will be a fence, basically from, as of right now, the fence will be, there could be a security gate in the front of the building, there'll be a fence all the way down to past Tim's property, which is the heating and cooling business. Then the slope and topography follows suit going down from like Russ's Auto and Angerstein. There wouldn't be a reason for a fence there because there's no access to it. But along Dave's, I'm thinking that we're probably gonna run it until there's that break in the opening, and that's where I was discussing with him. Where that break is that would be the point where I'm kind of concerned that people could walk up that slope and get in. So we're yet to decide. I might even put something there for the fire department too, like another gate.
Isn't this wall along your driveway?
No, it's actually the drive wall.
That goes from the town line back into the main section, isn't that road in that area where this wall?
There's, well, yeah,
It's
it's about
14 feet off. of it.
14 to 20 feet, depending upon where the drive comes in, correct?
I would, just a suggestion, you know, when you have these discussions with the neighboring property owner, I would, and it's certainly totally up to your discretion, but
Yeah.
I would strongly encourage you to have those communications in a written form with written acknowledgement
Sure.
from the other property owners so that we have a written record. And it's not just your word versus
Yeah, hearsay, I
his.
get it, yep.
You know, we got into this situation over here with Gabor and Ideal with the retaining wall and everything.
Sure.
It's just better to have everything on paper, so there's
Yeah,
a record to
I can ask
refer
Dave
back
for his
to.
email and do correspondence that way. I mean, we've been, like I said, we butted heads at the beginning.
Yeah.
Actually, if you look at me right now, I'm very disgusting. So the sediment and such that he's had to accumulate over the years, and obviously the water that funnels through the quarry area is supposed to be getting over to Lemke and basically drifting through. So we've been pumping it the last couple of weeks because of the 7-inch storm. I literally got down to pumping it to a less than the size of this room pond. And then all of a sudden it backfilled all the way to vehicles that he had on the property. So we pumped it out. And today I spent the last few hours going down to the quarry and scraping all the sediment out so that it could leach back through the cracks. And that's where I appreciate Dave and I actually starting to get along because he's letting me go through his property.
Yeah.
Basically, we're helping each other out.
Yeah, and that's all well and good, and I'm certainly not encouraging this in light of face-to-face conversations.
No, I get
Because
it.
I think
I
that's a
100%
lot
get it.
better.
I get it,
You know where I'm going though,
100%.
right?
Yes, that's her.
I have a question for Mr. Wood. If we're talking about the adjoining neighbor, the neighbor property,
Mhm.
was that the property that is currently under scrutiny for enforcement?
Indeed it is.
And even though it's not the subject matter here, but this development may impact it, has anything been done in connection with that matter? Is that scheduled to come back?
I don't, so when it turns into enforcement, which it did. I'm kind of removed from that, so I don't know if the building inspector or the police chief or whatever has, or if anyone has served notice of that. I mean, obviously, the applicant was here when that action was taken by the board. As I heard from Sean, it sounds like nothing has happened on the property to remove any of the.
That was
on-site
But I
regulations.
remain quiet, everyone, on that note.
Yeah.
Let's get along
No,
for now.
I
Let's get this
understand.
rolling. So,
You didn't bring it up, we
Yeah,
understand.
Okay, thank you.
I make a motion to grant a variance on the ordinance 78-43, paragraph 3, from a 3.1 slope to a 1.5 to 1 slope with the Kelly Rock Storage must provide a paperwork from the neighbor stating that he has no objections to this wall.
I'll second. We have a motion and second. Any more discussion? Ben?
So to clarify, the ordinance only requires notice. It doesn't delegate approval authority to the neighbor. Is that something? you
I would like to
potentially
see a
add?
signed paper that he was noticed. Or something that he acknowledged that he has been noticed about this variation. Would that, as you're
I
saying,
guess I would defer to you, Hector, if that leads into
Well, you have a return receipt, do you not?
I don't have a return receipt. What was provided
I'll
from.
be honest with you, it had not been received as today. I know that for a fact, 'cause I had it delivered to him 2 days ago. He had read through it, once again, this is hearsay. But I did talk to him today, he had not received it. In fact, I talked to Josh, the mail carrier, he had not seen it at the USPS yet. In fact, I've got a text message that states all that. But I did talk to Dave about it, and the one thing he had mentioned was basically the bioretention ponds. Obviously, if you're not in this business, like I read plans, so does he. Seeing where the bioretention pond was, he thought that might have been on his property, on the other side of the wall on our property. That was the only thing that he had a question about. And I can get if we need to sign something, I'm sure I can get something from him. I just don't know how it should be handed off.
I would recommend that you consider requesting a signed copy of the letter by the recipient. And that be a condition of approving the exemption here.
so Stated, so stated.
So in other words, this will not take effect until the applicant
So here's my question.
delivers to the clerk a signed copy by the other individual.
Okay, so in other words, if I get something to her by tomorrow or something, it's just that we're starting the wall on Monday, footings wise.
Yeah, you just bring in that he signed a piece of paper, that he's got knowledge, notice of this.
So I want to be very clear though, he's not approving it.
Right, correct. He's just being
acknowledging
noted, he's
receipt.
being acknowledged
Correct.
that he is seeing that there is gonna be a variation to the ordinance was.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to prove it, he just has to be acknowledged so that he's been notified.
Otherwise, nobody's neighbors would let anybody do anything on their property.
Right.
Just wanted to be clear.
That's the
Right, so just the construction certification letter and the acknowledgement of receipt of this letter
And I'll be honest with you, I went over with Mackenzie, one of Kevin's coworkers, and I was like, I didn't want to feel like I was forcing it upon him when I gave him the letter. I gave it to him as a kind gesture to be like, just in case this doesn't arrive on time, look this over if you have any questions or anything like that. And like I said, we literally have to show you the phone conversation. But if we need something signed, once again, I don't want to muck up the waters with him.
If he just replies to your email that he's seen your email,
Yeah.
you know, he says, oh yeah, okay, okay, that would be considered okay too, as long as he's been notified that he has seen something, you know.
and you can put that on us now, because we're the ones that are asking for it, so, you know.
Just that he's been notified, you know,
Hey,
that,
those jerks at the planning commission said I need to get this letter signed by you.
Acknowledge that you got the letter. Well, I texted him right now, so you guys want to see a text. I've got long days in front of me, so I'm just trying to get this thing rolling. All right, any other questions at all, or?
We have a-
Any more discussion? Do
Who
we,
made the
this might,
second? Did you amend your second?
do we have to amend your motion or
that's what it would.
acknowledgement?
I can withdraw the second.
I just amend my motion to that the Kelly Frank Landscaping provide a, copy of,
Signed receipt.
signed receipt,
Signed
that
copy.
the neighbor was notified of this.
And Josh, the mailman, also knows to give that, to like I said, I've known of it.
The Land and Post Office apparently has gotten rather selective in their
Actually,
deliveries.
it was sent to his house, that's why.
Yeah, if you
It
want.
was sent to my home, I just got it, and I just saw it. So I'm about to read it, so.
You just made that up.
What is that? Yeah, I'm just texting my wife, the entertained Diebler.
Photoshop.
Screen printed.
I'll second.
Does it actually say the address on there?
Yeah, it does.
Does it say Pewaukee?
Do we
Well, then
have,
Josh wouldn't be able to find it anyway, so.
we have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion?
Are you copied on that email from?
This
Hey,
is a text message. It just says, can you
Feel
please
free to-
acknowledge that you got it? It was sent to my home. I just got home. I just seen it.
If you could just make forward that to Ben, you know, that he can follow into your,
Take a screenshot
I'm doing that right
and
now.
email it, don't text it, email it, please.
Do you have your email?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
No, I talked to you when I talked to my
Opposed,
wife.
motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding the site plan for LANV 0068999002, which is approximately 6 acres of land zone A1 on the east of the village, for which the property owner desires to construct additional building.
No materials for received, so this could be tabled.
I'll make the motion to table item number 8.
Second.
We have a motion and second to table item 8. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action on landscaping updates from Saywall Development and Whispering Ridge. I'd asked this to be put on here because we were supposed to hear back by July from Saywall. And we were supposed to hear back by the end of August from Whispering Ridge. And have you heard anything back, Brenda, from Whispering Ridge Condo
I
Association?
have not.
Did we notice them that they were gonna be on the agenda?
I did not get to, talk to Ray this week.
Or Sewall?
There is an email that should be attached.
We got a
to your-
letter from
Yeah,
Kevin
that's
Sawall,
Right, I-
because this, to me, this is. Sawall was supposed to get back to us. There was talk about meeting with a couple of reps from the plan commission back in the early part of July, and here we are at the end of September. And now, I see this every time I walk out of my house. They cut most of the berms twice this year. They pulled the weeds once. The last 5 or 6 weeks, they've been cutting the grass. There's been no new planting, no new screening. And this has been being pushed off. He was supposed to respond by July. Here we are at the end of September. And the other issues we're having with it, my feeling is this needs to be addressed in a timely fashion, and it hasn't been done.
So to respond to that, I don't recall that it was supposed to have been addressed by the end of July. That may be
That
the
was
case.
30 days.
I don't remember, Mike, I don't
So
remember.
that would mean it would have come up at the June plan commission, and we told them it has to be taken care of by the July plan.
Right, we wanted a response by July. We got one from Mark Berg for Overstone in like 3 days. And in Mike's motion, Whispering Ridge being a condo association,
Gave them 2 months.
Yeah, because they have to go
All
back
I
and
had to do was
re-inventory,
Okay, so
or was that?
to fill in some of the timeline, Sewall did respond. And they said, hey, we've come up with a new landscape plan for phase 1. Phase 1 is already complete. Phase 1 has a previously approved landscape plan. I specifically told them, I don't want to approve this without having an on-site meeting / walkthrough. And we've been talking about that for at least a month of trying to schedule that. And when you and I talked about it, you said it would be a good idea to have Mike and Ron maybe do that. Kevin Sewall had suggested to me, let's even go over to Mammoth Springs so they can get some ideas of what this stuff would look like when it's fully grown. And we can walk Rock Point Village and look at the plan and get feedback on the plan. And you were going to participate if available when scheduled. It's still not scheduled. Take it for what it's worth. There was a death in the family. They had the services last weekend. Over the phone, I pressed Kevin, let's get this walkthrough done before the September Plan Commission meeting. He responded, it just was not gonna happen. So he said after the Plan Commission meeting, reach out to schedule that. So that's where it is. I don't mean to stand up for them on their underperformance on all of the issues that they've had. I'm just telling you the latest communication that I've had with them.
Do you know if all their buildings are built on phase 2 now?
It's gotta be close.
If it is, if they haven't gotten occupancy on all of them yet, the last one would be October 1st.
Because I noticed, I see,
I would think.
when I drove through there this past weekend, just out of curiosity, I want to see what Custer is looking like from their point.
Yeah.
Well, I was a little dismayed to see that around the clubhouse area, it's still dirt pile and nothing is done yet. And if people are living there, I would have fully expected at least to be graded now and attempting to get something in it this year for grass. you know, to keep the dirt from moving. I believe they're putting a second lift on the blacktop, but I'm not happy that they're building in phase 3. And it's a mud road through there, and you know that mud road is gonna be tracked 2 ways. Out on the main street through the existing area, or out onto New Custard when it gets paved. And I would like to see at least the road put in with stone, at least, so, you know, crushed stone. Not if they don't want to blacktop it, which I'm surprised that it's not blacktop, it should be blacktop, otherwise they can't rent anything in phase 3.
Are they having problems getting that box culvert in or something? Cause isn't there a big, like a vault culvert that's going in between phase 1 and 3?
Yeah.
Connects them all?
I don't know that they're having problems with it. My hunch is that they're just waiting until
They get closer.
to get closer to filling the whole phase 3 up to grade, so that you don't have this big.
Yeah, maybe they're just trying to keep traffic down in between the two.
I don't know.
I don't- Yeah, I've driven back through there a couple times myself through Mike, and I don't disagree, I think. But, you know, again, that's why we hold a letter of credit, right?
Well, that,
Which has
that I
been a
think
topic
is-
of discussion as well, right?
yes, and I think that that's still in play. Phil Cosm was contacted. I don't know if he responded. As far as the agreement goes, if they have gotten all the occupancy permits, which has been represented to be the case, that would be a legitimate release. However, if there are compliance issues with regards to the attributes for phase 2, I think the release of a letter of credit should be re-reviewed and maybe at an on-site location to point out that there may be some negative consequences due to their failure from the standpoint of tracking mud and creating problems for the residents there.
Yeah, I mean, we've had ongoing discussions with them through this entire process about, you know, that type of issue. And I gotta believe that they're getting a tremendous amount of heat from those residents about the conditions of the site.
I mean, especially for the amount of money that they're asking, you can't go outside your door and go walk anywhere except for the blacktop.
Oh, they all come to the west end.
Yeah, because when you
So
go,
I've seen everybody's dog within 20 feet of my lot line. Because there is no area for their dog park yet. Which they've been in there for 14 months now. And like Mike said, so much of that is mud. Ron drove down the street the other day. Mike Milbauer bought in Brenda a couple of rocks. They're out there sweeping. I did get a copy on the email where they finally put some signage on the sweeper. 4:30 yesterday afternoon, the guy's driving down the middle of Main Street. There's such a big dust cloud, you can't see traffic either way. Then I watch him take and drive it and dump the hopper in Al Bargain Quest front yard. The next time he comes down, he dumps it in Marv Berg's property. It's one issue after another. And I live next to this. I dealt with these 4 o'clock starts and I'm getting really fed up with it. And this 2 months after the case, I had a death in the family. What was the excuse for not having it done by July as he was requested? The letters were sent out. Mike made the motion and no response. We get a response the end of September. And this is my point. My complaints before I got on the board were never addressed. Nothing was done about it. He's just doing whatever he pleases. And the mud in the road, the rocks in people's front yards, to me, that's just a big sign of disrespect. In addition to what's his water bill gonna be? Because his he signed his agreement for that project. And he didn't abide by that, if I recall correctly, what she told me when they pressure tested that main and left it on. When do we stop this kind of stuff going on? What do we do to keep it from being discussed every month? That's why I want this on here.
Well, I think you understand our position a little better now, because you've been on here, what, 1.5 years, and here we are, still doing it, so it hasn't changed since you were sitting out there, so now you get the position that the board and the
So
planning
what do
commission's
we
been
do
in.
about this?
Do we
Do-
have actual written complaints from?
How many do you have, Brenda?
I have a few, yeah. I mean, Mike didn't do a official one the other day, but Ron was here and he was going to talk to them after he left, so.
Isn't that what we want so
We
that we
talked
can?
to them
take action?
directly right when we got the complaint.
I
And the
tried,
complaints people should keep making the complaints. Okay, but like we talked about several months ago, complaints need to be.
In writing.
It's infinitely more helpful to have a picture. If there are unsafe conditions such as, someone kicking up a cloud of dust, like, do not call me. Call the police.
Yeah.
And I forwarded that on to the police. And Chief Bells said, yes, thank you for letting me know. Remind people to call me, and photos always help. And as cool as it may feel for someone to walk in and throw a rock on Brenda's desk, in terms of enforceability, pictures are infinitely more valuable than that.
and
Infinitely.
I
Because now we've
requested,
got, I've
Mike.
addressed with the developer that got a new construction rep. His name is Gage Christensen or Chrisman. And I addressed to him specifically this issue about, hey, the sweeper getting dumped across the street. He says, hey, I talked to my guys, they dumped it over here. So now it's my word or his word against your word of what your neighbors told you, and it's just a mess. We
I
need,
know,
like,
again,
specific
we have-
documentation.
we're dealing with contractors with less than desirable habits. My wife yelled
I'm
at
not
me.
standing up for that.
I know that, but I have told people, get pictures. I was coming home with the traffic. I parked, walked to the street with my phone. He's down, he's dumped, and he's on his way back with the broom up. I'm not stopping in traffic. I've asked Mike Milbauer, we all know he loves to take pictures. Take them and send them to Brenda, but get pictures. And from my own experience, I tried for 6 months to get a complaint form, which is why I changed it as soon as I took office. And I did again, go to my neighbors. I need them in writing. I need pictures.
I'd love to do something. It sounds terrible. I don't go that direction. I don't know. I don't see this stuff, but I'd love to have something in front of me that we could.
Right.
Hearsay is one thing.
Actionable.
You know, we can't operate on hearsay. I'm sorry.
Right.
And without a written complaint, I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. Your complaint does not exist. I don't care who you are, what position you hold. Your complaint don't mean squat without it written.
But your concerns mean something. It's just, what do we do?
Right.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so concerning letter of credit, their most recent request to reduce on phase 1 still would leave a balance of over $100,000 left on the letter of credit. So the trick is going that route. I mean, similar to the defective work issue, it's like the situation in which you pull the letter of credit is so that you can do the work yourself as a village. Now, the developer knows that the screening along their south property line, for example, is insufficient, even though it's probably in line with what was on the approved plan. It's just insufficient. So they want to rectify that. Told them, don't waste your time and effort just taking a stab at something you think might work, like, let's get a couple plan commissioners out there. I think the next thing would be probably to step it up a notch, instead of letting them dictate the schedule for that, but probably the plan commission dictate the schedule, it shall happen by this date or else, kind of a thing.
Well, that's like, you know, unfortunately, I wasn't in the plan commission at the beginning of this project. So I don't know what encompasses phase one landscape.
Sure.
But I
It's
do know.
basically everything you can see from the road.
But I do know that they built that clubhouse pretty darn early in the construction of phase one.
Yep.
That tells me that that should have been landscaped a year ago. So that whole middle area where the dogs are supposed to be walking around that building, it should have been landscaped a year ago.
Well,
And
they had,
if it's not done, you know, that is part of phase one, then they're behind and they should be put a notice that they are in violation of their contract, developer's contract.
so I will say that the front of it is fully landscaped. The back of it abuts,
Except for the
abuts,
berm.
Right.
excuse me, abuts to phase two. And that was still getting significant site work done even yet this year as they kind of were doing their vertical construction and stuff. So I can understand why some of that lagged behind a little bit in between the clubhouse and the phase two buildings. But yeah,
But it
certainly,
should have been caught up by now because.
certainly
people
by
are living in-
now, you would think,
Because people are living in the buildings along the back side there now,
right.
you know, on the east side of that property, on the backside of phase two.
But
That's-
I think Ben makes a good suggestion. I think we dictate the timeline and somebody just, maybe President Summers just sends an email and says, here's when the meeting is scheduled for. And, you know, we hope that we can get this resolved yet this season. So this doesn't affect the possible release of any of your future letter of credit reduction requests.
And this is why I brought up that when he wanted to build over here on the Quadero property on Main Street, that if he disturbs the dirt, it has to be seeded right away, so it doesn't sit for 2 years as dirt.
Right. Now, I mean, the risk we take, again, I think what we've been trying to do is we've taken a little softer approach with these promises of enhancing the landscaping beyond what was already approved. Now, if we start taking a hard line, you might be pulling some of that off the table.
Well, the thing is that if, before I give an extension of approval, yeah, let's add this, let's add that. No, get it done first, then let's talk about adding. You know,
What are we talking about adding?
so I don't know, they want a
More
meeting on,
screening along the property line, along their south property line for one.
Yeah.
Like
I
right
mean-
now, it's a bunch of shrubs and whatever, they're gonna add more trees, et cetera, to
And-
actually
and
get
do
more
they-
visible.
do they really
Visual
need
barrier.
permission to add more trees? If they feel that they need to add trees to make it so it's more screening, they don't need our permission to do that, they can do that anytime. It's if they take trees out, then they're not following up their
I
landscape.
think the landscape plan, yeah, I would agree with that philosophically. The landscape plan is really designed to set a minimum.
Minimum.
Right?
Right.
So if you want to do more than that, knock yourself out. I really doubt Don's gonna complain about having more screening, so he doesn't have to
Oh,
See
I
more
lost
dogs
two trees. this
crap
morning,
along the
so
fence line at 4 AM.
I lost the two between 60 and 80 foot trees along the property line. And I sent our pictures the beginning of April of a tree that's rotted halfway through that I showed you last week. But I agree that we should dictate a time. Mike and Ron, we pick a date and we'll,
Yeah, or a window of time, maybe give them a 3-day window. Hey, when can you meet on these 3 days?
you know, I understand they had a loss in a family. That's a bad situation all over, but I'd hope to get something done a few months ago. And so
They
we
were
can
supposed
set
to
up.
be here by July.
Yeah.
That was our fault for not following up then.
And the same thing with Whispering Ridge. How do we follow up on that?
They were supposed to be.
They
there
were
in August.
supposed to self-assess.
Yes, they have to self-assess and get a report back to us that they are basically saying, yeah, okay, we recognize these trees need to be. You know,
So Brenda, can you request that assessment from them so we have it for next month's meeting?
Yes.
okay, the next meeting is October 27th. I'm available October 10th through the 14th and 18th through the 21st.
18th through the 21st, I'm available too.
So the week of the 18th through the 21st, that way Ron and I can report to the plan commission meeting on the 27th.
Morning, afternoon, what?
I don't care.
Is there a reason more of us can't go?
No, you gotta watch it, you don't have a walking forum though.
Yeah. Or you notice it at the meeting.
Oh, there, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
If-
but
if-
then you gotta let Brenda know if you're gonna have a forum.
That'd be more.
Or,
four.
or just let her know when you're gonna do it and she can notice it
Anyway,
anyway, just in case.
Yeah, I would do it that way. Once you tell them the date and time. And then have Brenda notice it, that it might be a walking forum, basically, you know, because then anybody from the
Then
planning
you can
commission.
send out an email, let us know that you're gonna be there.
Yeah.
If I'd like to make it, can't always promise.
Bring your cameras.
And boots.
Oh, it did work again.
Rain boots.
So Brenda, you already noticed Whispering Ridge once. Did you send a letter?
Yes, they sent an email and, a copy of their plan, their landscape plan to the president over there. And they said that they had lost some trees anyway, and they were going to go back around and look at, their stuff, so, and then I didn't hear back from her, so,
But they knew that we wanted to know by August.
yes.
That's the second letter we'll send to them. How do we?
That they got till October
Say that.
27th, the 20, that they have till October.
I don't think the situation there
It's critical.
is dire. I mean, you know, I think they have some issues to address, but, you know, I think we've got some latitude in terms of how we deal with this before we push it to an enforcement action.
No, I'm not looking for enforcement. I'm looking for a response. They've had 90 days.
Yeah, if they could let us know by October 21st, you know, basically, that way it's a week before the meeting, it can be put on in the paperwork packet without, not the day of. So that's why I would say that Friday before, you know, we can write it up that way.
That they'll be on the agenda.
Yeah, so that it'll be on the agenda for the 27th then. And then as far as Marv Berg and Overstone, I saw that they had dug out a bunch of dead stuff and started replacing anyhow, so.
Yep, they already did
He's really got.
all of that work.
That place clean, you know, I mean, he's been staying on top of it, and that's what, you know, the roads look good and I see they just replaced a bunch of bad curbs too.
Yeah, because they're gonna actually be doing some milling
Let's be ready for the second lift.
Saturday, and then next week, they're gonna put the final lift on.
Final lift up around to that back area.
Up to 2A, through 2A, so that'll be up, yeah, kind of around past the clubhouse.
As Marv responded within a matter of a couple of days. And towards the end of August, they were out there jerking out his dead evergreens and that out by the road. I don't know if he had anything further back,
Oh, yeah.
driving past.
Yep.
They were out there working on his berms, and they're out there by Marv. What would you say, Patrick, once a month? He's got a landscaping company that comes in and they're out there on a regular basis.
Yep.
You know, Marv responded in writing and
Yeah.
Marv has always seemed to do everything he's been asked.
Yeah, so Wall responded in writing. They responded within the first 30 days and they produced this new landscape plan. It's
Have you
what's
seen it
happened
yet?
in two, yes, I have seen it. It's what's happened in the last 2 months that is very frustrating and falling short.
Okay,
As far as this process goes, I know the concerns have gone on much longer than that. I'm just saying for this process.
well, like Mike said, that is all mud yet. When, during our rainstorm, I was down there with Tom Zulik and got yelled at several hours later because I took my boots off in the house, not outside.
I make a motion that we send a notice to Whispering Ridge on their landscaping, that they should get back to the village on the update on their landscaping plan by October 21st. And I also send a notice to Solwell that the village president will be setting a walkthrough date of the week of October 18th through the 21st. And it'll be a walking quorum notice meeting, so we can walk the property of Solwell. And not only phase 1, but we will be looking at phase 2 for grass.
We have a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. Any more discussion?
I don't want to.
No.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A lot of this for 3 years. I
I fully understand.
What did you do? Here's my question about the postcard I didn't get.
I told that to a lot of people. And they're like, what? Wait, why?
Well, first he says,
I will say it was
maybe I
pressured
wasn't
by
working. It said, close posted.
Yeah.
He said, and it's a very important posted. and everybody-
A contractor acknowledged that they.
And so we had a discussion, and I had a discussion with someone else I got. And then I said, sure you haven't seen this one. The picture was familiar. I guess I'll have to make some phone calls.
Ron,
So today I
are
was told
the
if
Don's prices for the salt?
if you heard anything, because I hadn't got a contract.
Oh, yeah.
He says, "You know, I haven't heard back."
Well, I know the plows are,
Yeah, yeah.
and I know
I had somebody
his
call me
old
from
supervisor
today.
when he plowed.
Here,
kind
just
of
here,
lucky.
because they're not getting their mail.
It's a family
Yeah,
friend.
then all of these
He
places
told me
change
he
their
goes
mailbox
down
or their mailing
because he
address.
lives there early.
Well, how are they supposed to have a general delivery address? How are they supposed to, you know, get
I've
their
got a
checks
couple of
sent
places
to their
Because
that I
what they have
contacted
it over at
business
the
rep
post office,
information.
but some crap they put in my box, and everybody's getting in their PO boxes now. But how their mail should be delivered.
Yeah, I got that too, and I'm just like, what's going on? So I told him, I'm like, you know, started having calls, I don't know where to go
And
from
guess
there.
what? The Tim guy, he's gone.
The only option we've got
Because,
now
because
is,
the guy, when I dropped off the mapping for Whispering Ridge, and
Washington
here are
County's
the
got 2
addresses
patrol trucks.
of the
on
new
them for
subdivision.
bid.
Okay, and he told me, he said, well, it's probably sitting in a file on somebody's desk over there waiting to enter. And I'm like, that is not my fault, nor my
Guess what?
residents'
And
fault.
guess what? There are mailboxes there with address.
And then she calls them and he says, no, that's not our
As far
responsibility.
as public.
I'm like,
works,
oh my
Mark,
God, certainly not.
I got.
Well, that's where I want to bring it up next week.
We had 2 different answers.
The budget
Yes,
hearing.
right,
The
right.
liquid dispensary.
Exactly, that's exactly what we're getting, and I'm just like, oh my God, I said, why is this just been an issue when that was all of a sudden now it's an issue?
The brine was about 50 cents a gallon plus delivery.
Weird meeting.
Oh, that would be.
Because I asked.
It was over by Schneider, somewhere over there.
Well, you got it.
Yeah, we wanted to do something, he called me and he called Beth, but he never submitted anything.
Mike and I were trying to figure it out.
Yeah, somewhere over there, he said there's already. He wasn't here. Came in quite right.
Workers, one sick, the other one can drive.
I was.
And I yeah, because now I see up in Violence.
I thought I recalled him saying that.
They're doing some up there, some of the towns up there now. They get the people in. They're paying to send them to CDL school because you gotta go to that place. You can't just drive the guy around, so okay, now you go take a test, but you can't do that anymore. Now you have to go actually go to school. Yeah, so a lot of the towns up there now pay people, will pay you and then
Contractor opening
go
valve.
So
I
you're,
heard you
it's
were
like, but you're also gonna commit for a year, 2 years.
If- So what I'm trying to figure out is, if it didn't really start happening, nobody worked in the morning, what triggered it over there?
What I heard from Ryan Fisher Construction, what I heard is one of the contractors working on the building.
I'm gonna ask you, what you guys are doing on your
Heavy
place?
equipment over water.
Say hello to Karen lady for me. Hello, how you doing? Good. Good.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, when you get stuff.
I haven't like interviewed him, so I didn't-
We have pictures of that.
And I was up and down the attic steps today bringing up, you know, Halloween stuff.
And the contract-
Yeah, that'll do it. I should have left an e-brace on that one, really good with that.
Right, right. And then what is the protocol for those lines being pressurized while they're still being construction? Is that standard practice or should those lines have been, should that valve have been shut down?
So
I
up
mean, you
through
wanted to circulate a little bit, but it's a dead end anyway.
what you do, because there's no use on it, then before you put it into service, you reflush the system.
Okay.
That's it. So they disinfected and pressure tested right away so that we could say, okay, construction done, no leaks.
Right.
And then they
Backfill.
isolated it just because there's no demand down there anyways.
Right, right. Yeah, that was the first place Tom Zoo went.